So today we're going to look at configuration management. Configs are your life. They will make the difference between your network going up and going down, between passing audits and failing, between running around for days trying to find things that, quite honestly, you'll never find without good configuration management in place. And we need tools to be able to do this for you and help automate that process because we just have too many devices to deal with. And really the most important thing about and the big reason for configuration management and to have these things in place is because human beings make mistakes. Let's see how we can stop that from happening. So here we are on the IMC homepage, and you all know that IMC does a really good job at monitoring your devices, at tracking faults, at looking at things like CPU and memory utilization, how many errors do you have, what are in a normal state, warning state, all these good things. But there's a bunch of services. That's definitely a huge part of IMC. And one of the services that ships with the base platform, so if you've got IMC, you've definitely got this, is the Configuration Management, which is Configuration Center and Compliance Center. So kind of the base of configuration management starts with the software versions. So we have a software library that we're able to import devices, and we can import these from the web. You can grab that here, or you can also go to the System tab and look at Live Update. So that'll be over here, System Resource Live Update. There we go. And that will, for only your HP products, go out and actually download the latest version of code for your products. We can import those directly from devices as well, or from, if you already downloaded and you've got it on your laptop, we can get it in the library that way. It doesn't really matter how you get it in here. And you can see we've got a bunch of different ones here. So one of the nice things that is built into the system is when you import a software file, you can actually give it the applicable devices that it will apply to. So what this really is this is a sanity check to make sure that you don't do silly things like try to take this 5120 code version, COMWare 5 code version, and try to apply it onto a Cisco 3560 switch. That just won't work. And in fact, you could end up bricking your device and getting to the point where you have to go out, roll a truck if you mess this up. So the next thing you're going to want to do is to actually baseline the devices. So having all these automation features in here to be able to do all the hard work for you is critical. So from a baseline standpoint, what we're saying from a software baseline is that you can either apply this to an individual device, which you could do if you wanted to. There are some isolated small use cases for that, but more than likely you're going to want to do this to all devices. So we're going to say every single 5120 in my entire network that's in the IMC database must be running this particular version of code. And we can have two software versions as a baseline. So we're going to go and grab the 5120s. And then you can see here there was a 5120 TA, so that's the trades compliant one. Again, this is not the trades compliant code, so I don't want this software, even though it could run on those boxes, running on them. So my policy, again, I can kind of play around with the policy to what makes sense for me or for you. That device check, that's doing that applicable device to make sure that we have just the switches that we're trying to apply a baseline to, this code can actually be applied to. And there we go. Success all around. Wonderful. So what does that actually mean now? Well, now we have the ability in the configuration audit section to go down and do a software audit. So what this is going to do is this is going to go out and check all the devices. And now I've said this is the version of code they must be running. Now what version of code are they actually running? And you can go through this whole list. As you can imagine, if you have thousands of devices, this might start to be a problem. But as your devices get a lot cleaner, your configuration management practices gets a lot more ingrained in your system and the way you work, you just go in here, filter out for the devices that have a changed version, and very quickly I go from that big long list down to two devices where I can see they changed. And I've got the version of code they're running and the version of code they're supposed to be running. So if you look closely here, this means that I don't practice what I preach. I have a software baseline version of code which is older than the new version of code. Or maybe I shouldn't be running the new version of code. Maybe those are new switches just out of the box and they're running a version of code that I have not done the testing to make sure this version of code runs in my environment. Again, we can support either paradigm. It's really what is your internal policy. So now we've dealt with software. Now what about configurations? Well, configurations, this is actually how your devices run and what they do. So we, of course, multi-vendor devices, we can look at running configurations, startup configurations. We can go into the device and look at what actually versions of code and all that for a specific device. So we're going to go down here to the bottom. We're going to find an HP 5500 EI, and we're going to look at the configuration manager. So this is a place where your auditors will love this, because you can have IMC automatically back up your configurations and do it every week, come rain or shine, and you will have a backup of what the current state of that device was on that particular point in time. And these are actually done with an MD5 hash in the background. So we can actually make that sure that this config, nobody's manipulated it, nobody's played with it, and we can compare them. So you can see here we've got a couple different configurations, and the version of code has changed, right? So now I can tell if there's something has gone strange. I can go in and really make sure that if something's changed, what did change, right? That's one of the first questions when something starts going wrong in your network. The first question you ask, what changed? So what happens if there's two different kinds of devices? So you have two 5500s or two 5120 EIs or something like that. One of them's working and one of them's not. Why might that be? So really good thing, and I'm going to leave actually this in the video and not edit it out. I'm actually trying to do this on a device that is not on the network right now. So IMC is a wonderful, wonderful tool, but it's not magic. We can't actually back up configurations or compare them for devices that are not online. So I'm going to go and grab a couple of 5120s here that are online, and we're going to see what the difference is between the two of them. So right now, this system is actually going out, and I can check a backed up configuration, or I can check the current running or the current startup. I have all three of those options. So I'm going to say the running, two different devices. If you look at the IP addresses, I'm going to click OK. And now IMC is going out right now and backing up the configuration for those two devices. And it's going to display exactly what is going on. So just like the other compare config, you can see here we've got red and blue. We've got some change lines. We've got some unique lines. So let's go and click on the show differences only. And let's get down right into the meat of the problem. What has changed here? So look at that. Somebody has disabled the HTTP server. That would explain why I can't get into that the web server of that particular switch, wouldn't it? Look at this. On the right-hand side, somebody's actually got centralized authentication. They've got Radius all configured, but it's not on the left. Well, that would explain why the passwords don't work on the left. So you can see how this can become a really valuable tool to be able to really streamline your troubleshooting process when you've got one device that's working exactly like you think it should and another one that just isn't, and you're not quite sure why. So this really allows you to apply computer techniques like string comparison to figure out what's the difference between those two boxes very, very, very quickly. So the last thing here, we can back up configurations, but we can also push configurations, which again is critical. You don't want to have people running around, logging in devices with a console cable, telnetting into switches. You'd rather use something like IMC to be able to push out those configurations for you in an automated fashion, where you can make sure that everything is done perfectly, at least as perfect as what's in the configuration. So you can push a static configuration, which is what we were just looking at, or you can also go in here, like change strings, and you can put a variable in here, which is what that $sign read-only string, read-write string is. And this will force you to put this in at the time you deploy the configuration. So there's a lot of flexibility here. You can either have static configs that you push, or you can push them using variables as part of the configuration template. So again, baseline the software, back up your configs, push configs. Rinse, wash, repeat. So the last thing here we're going to look at is the Compliance Center. All right, so the Compliance Center is really, really, really a powerful tool for you. So once you figure out what your policies are and how your devices should be configured, you can actually use the Compliance Center to be able to identify when your devices creep out of that desired state. So for instance, we've got the NSA security policy in here. These are a bunch of default rules that are in line with the NSA security policy. And we can say, let's look at this Cisco HTTP server. And this rule here will apply to all Cisco devices. And it's basically, it's going to go through and make sure that that command here at the bottom, no IP HTTP server, is applied to any of these different devices, right? So any of those Cisco devices, if it's in those device series, this will apply to those. So that's a pretty powerful tool. We can also run commands to be able to grab information directly from the devices. So you could do a lot of things with this as well. And then you're going to roll all that up into a check task. So the check task can be scheduled immediately or periodically. And in this one, I am going to create a task name that says check NSA security. We're going to make sure the name is good here. There's a little, the question mark is always a good thing. And I'm going to say periodically. Again, you saw that was immediately versus periodically. Periodically, of course, I can now run it as often as I like. So if you have a compliance policy that says you must make sure that your devices are in compliance with the NSA security every week, somebody or something has to check that automatically for you. Get IMC to do all the work for you. Work smarter, not harder. So we're going to go in here and we're going to say Monday morning at 3 o'clock a.m. every Monday morning, I want to run this particular task, this check, to make sure that I can do the work Monday morning. If there's been a policy creep over the week, I'm well aware of that, and I can do it first thing Monday morning, clean up the configurations, and everything will be good. Put in a description, always put in descriptions. And you can see here we've got a bunch of the default rules, and right now it's going to try to apply all of them. But I don't want to do that. I only want to apply the NSA task. So I'm going to uncheck the NSA task, leave that as the only one left in the list, and now I have to choose the devices that I would like to apply this to. So I'm going to go in, and this is use the device filtering out here, and I'm going to say grab all the routers. That's what I'm concerned with. Click OK. Do a quick visual verification. That's always a good thing. So this is out going into the system right now, and this is actually going to apply that particular rule set to all of these devices and create that binding. So at this point in time, yeah, you had to do some work to define the policy and understand what your policy is, which is always going to be the case. But once you've done that, now the system takes over and does all the hard work for you and frees up your time to be able to do other more important tasks. So you can see here the task was created successfully. I'm going to click on this, and instead of waiting for Monday at 3 a.m., I'm going to execute it right now. So this is going to take a few seconds. This is going to go out and actually run that configuration or the policy check. So we will do a refresh here. There we go. So that was really fast. That's because this is actually running against the configurations that have already been backed up to IMC. It's not running against the live devices, at least this particular task. So we can see we've got some problems here. And I can look at the history. I can do this by device or by the type of policy. So the type of policy is a nice way to do it. You can actually look at it for how am I doing for HTTP enabled? How am I doing for, is my login enabled properly? So you can see I've got a lot of things to clean up in this environment, but that's part of operating a network. The first task is always to find what's wrong, and at this point I can go through and start checking these off the list one by one. All these different devices. I can create a configuration task, a segment like we showed earlier in the video, to be able to fix a lot of these problems, use IMC to push it out to all the devices at the same time. Wash, rinse, repeat. Like I said, configuration management, critical. It's one of the most important things and least sexy things in network operations and network management, but I absolutely promise you that if you take the time and the discipline to do it right, you will have a much more stable network. See you guys next time on the next IMC management tutorial.